Welcome to Security Sunday. We're diving deep into the cybersecurity headlines you need to know about, and this is brought to you by CysNet Shield.
That's right, the folks who really know their stuff when it comes to pen testing and red teaming.
Absolutely. So each week, we cut through the noise, look at reports from reliable cybersec platforms.
And basically try to pull out the key insights for you. The landscape changes so fast, doesn't it?
It really does. This week, we've got quite a mix. Law enforcement actions, some nasty exploits doing the rounds.
And even a ransomware gang getting a taste of its own medicine. So, yeah, lots to cover. Let's jump in.
Okay, first up, Operation Moonlander. Sounds like sci-fi, but this was U.S. and Dutch law enforcement working together.
Yeah, and they took down a pretty significant proxy botnet. We're talking around 7,000 devices.
7,000. And what kind of devices were these?
Well, this is interesting. It was a mix. Lots of Internet of Things devices, you know, the smart gadgets,
Yeah.
but also a lot of end-of-life systems.
Ah, the old stuff people forget about but leave plugged in.
Exactly. Devices that aren't getting security updates anymore, they become really easy targets. It's a huge blind spot for a lot of people and businesses.
Makes sense. And this botnet, its main job was basically hiding criminals online. Anonymity.
That's the core purpose, a digital smokescreen, like you said.
Huh.
And the U.S. DOJ has actually charged 4 people, 3 Russians, 1 from Kazakhstan, for supposedly running it.
And they were making money from this.
Oh, yeah. Big money. Reports say over $46 million. They were charging monthly subscriptions, anything from like $10 up to over 100.
46 million. Since when?
Get this, apparently since 2004. This thing might have been running in some form for 2 decades.
Wow. That's persistence. And profitable, clearly.
Definitely profitable.
Right.
Shows why these operations are so attractive to criminals and why taking them down is so important.
And the FBI found examples here in the U.S., like hacked routers.
Yeah, they found routers, I think it was in Oklahoma, that had malware installed without the owners having any clue, just silently turning home routers into part of this criminal network.
Silent takeover.
Yeah.
That's creepy. You wouldn't even know your device is part of it.
Often not. Maybe things slow down a bit, but usually. No idea. It really makes you think about what's running on your network, you know?
So true. And Lumen Technologies, their Black Lotus labs, had some data on this.
They did. They were seeing about 1,000 unique bots checking in with the command and control servers each week, and those servers were based in Turkey.
1,000 a week. Where were these bots located mostly?
Over half were actually in the U.S., then Canada, Ecuador, so it was global, but a big concentration stateside.
Which makes sense if they're selling access, right? Target-rich environment.
Exactly. And that distribution makes it harder for law enforcement, too. Hides the source.
The services disrupted were called anyproxy.net and 5sox.net.
Correct. Lumen thinks it was basically the same botnet, just different branding. And 5sox was openly advertising over 7,000 online proxies daily, all paid for in crypto, naturally.
Just blatant, an open marketplace for cybercrime tools.
Pretty much. Highlights how brazen these operators can be.
And the malware behind it was called the Moon.
Yep, the Moon. It's been linked to another proxy service called Faceless, too. So Lumen took action. They basically null routed the traffic.
Null routed meaning cut off communication.
Essentially, yeah. Blocked the infected devices from talking to the command servers in Turkey, cuts the strings, renders the bots useless to the operators.
And the suspicion is they were using known exploits against those end-of-life devices we mentioned.
That's the theory. It's a classic tactic. Find old, unpatched vulnerabilities in devices nobody's updating anymore. Easy pickings.
So a big reminder for you listening. If you have old tech still connected, it's a risk. Not just to you, but potentially to others if it gets roped into a botnet.
Absolutely crucial takeaway. EOL means end of security updates, generally. That's an open door for attackers using old, well-known tricks.
The C2 infrastructure,
Yeah.
5 servers in Turkey. You said 4 used port 80, the standard web port.
Right. But 1 used UDP on port 1443. The thinking is that might have been for data storage, maybe exfiltrated data.
Using a non-standard port to hide?
Could be. Trying to slip past basic network monitoring that might just focus on common ports like 80 or 443. Need that comprehensive visibility.
And the FBI put out an advisory warning about routers being exploited for persistent access.
Yes, getting that persistent foothold is key for attackers. It means they can stay in even if the original vulnerability gets patched. They install their own tools, like this proxy malware.
Which brings us back to the Moon malware. It's been around since 2014. targeting Linksys riders.
That's right. And the worrying thing is, apparently it didn't even need passwords for some older Linksys models. Just found an open port, exploited a script vulnerability.
No password needed. Ouch.
Yeah. Then it phones home to the C2 server, gets instructions, and part of those instructions can be to spread itself further. It's wormable, in a sense.
A digital chain reaction infecting more devices.
Precisely. That's how these botnets grow and become so resilient.
And when someone bought access to this proxy network, they just got an IP and a port. No password, no extra security.
Apparently not. Just the connection details, which obviously makes it super easy to abuse.
And abuse it they did. Ad fraud, DDoS attacks, brute forcing logins.
Exploiting stolen data, all the usual stuff you'd expect criminals to use anonymity for. The lack of authentication just made it wide open.
Okay, so bringing it back to practical advice for everyone listening, what can you do?
Well, it's the fundamentals, but they're fundamental for a reason. Reboot your router regularly. That can sometimes clear out temporary infections. Install security updates for your router, for everything.
Change the default passwords, please. If you haven't, pause this and go do it.
Yes, use strong, unique passwords. And critically, if a device is end of life, if the manufacturer isn't supporting it with security patches anymore, it's really time to upgrade.
It's just not worth the risk anymore.
It really isn't. These basic hygiene steps massively reduce your risk of ending up as part of the next botnet.
The bottom line, proxy services are a big threat, and there are just so many vulnerable IoT and old devices out there providing the fuel. Constant vigilance needed.
It's a persistent challenge, absolutely. The sheer number of connected devices is staggering.
Okay, moving on. Let's talk SAP, a critical remote code execution flaw. CVE 2A 2025-31324. CVSS 10.0. Max severity.
Yeah, 10.0 is as bad as it gets. And what's worrying here is how fast attackers jumped on it. Forescout saw infrastructure weaponizing this flaw back in late April.
That's incredibly fast. The window to patch is just shrinking all the time.
It really is. And the group Forescout spotted, they're calling Chaya04, believed to be China-linked.
And they were using this SAP NetWeaver flaw to get remote code execution. Basically run their own code on the server.
Exactly. They did it by uploading things called web shells. Think of them as backdoors placed on the web server.
How did they upload them?
Through a specific endpoint. Development server metadata uploader. It highlights that attackers will probe everywhere, not just the obvious places.
So secure everything. Got it. Yeah. And RelayQuest saw this being exploited too.
They did. They flagged it early and saw it being used to drop these web shells, and also something called Brute Ratel C4.
Brute Ratel C4? What's that? Sounds intense.
It is. It's a post-exploitation toolkit. So once they're in using the SAP flaw, they deploy Brute Ratel to dig deeper, move around the network, steal credentials, maintain control, sophisticated stuff.
It sounds like multiple groups were using this flaw, not just Chaya04.
Definitely seems that way. OnApps has found hundreds of SAP systems compromised globally. Energy sector, manufacturing, government, all over the place.
Hundreds. Wow. And they saw activity going back months.
Yeah, reconnaissance, like scanning for vulnerable systems as far back as January. Then successful compromises happening in March. Mandiant even saw exploitation around March 12th.
So these things were getting hit well before some of the public alerts.
It looks like it. And it wasn't just these advanced groups. OnApps saw opportunistic attacks, too. People dropping web shells, maybe trying to mine cryptocurrency. A real free-for-all on vulnerable systems.
Okay, back to Chaya04. They were using a specific tool.
Yes, a reverse shell written in Golang called Supershell. They managed to trace it back to a specific IP address.
And that IP address had other suspicious stuff going on.
It did. Other open ports, including one using a dodgy self-signed certificate trying to look like Cloudflare. Classic evasion tactic.
Trying to blend in. And they found other tools linked to this actor, too.
A whole arsenal. Things like NTS and Soft Ether VPN for tunneling. Cobalt Strike, another major attack framework, plus reconnaissance tools. They came prepared.
And the link to China is based on what? Infrastructure. Tools.
Both, it seems, using Chinese cloud providers for their infrastructure, and some of the tools had Chinese language elements. Those are often key clues in attribution, though attribution is always tricky, but those are strong indicators.
Right. So for listeners running SAP, what's the advice? Patch yesterday.
Pretty much. Apply the patches for CVE 2025-31324 immediately. Also, restrict access to that development server metadata uploader endpoint if you can.
And maybe disable the Visual Composer component if you don't use it. Less attack surface.
Exactly. Disable what you don't need. And of course, monitor your SAP systems very closely for any weird activity. Look for those web shells or unusual connections.
One Apsys' CTO made a worrying point, though. They saw attacks after the patch was released.
Yeah, that's sobering. It suggests more advanced attackers might be using exploits against systems that haven't been patched yet. Or maybe they already got in before the patch and are now using that existing access.
So patching is essential, but maybe not enough if you were already compromised.
Correct. You need detection and response too. You need to assume you might have been breached before the patch and actively hunt for threats.
Okay, let's switch gears. Cisco. Another max severity patch, this time for iOS XE, wireless controllers. CDE 2025-2188, another 10.0.
Seems to be the theme this week. This one allows an unauthenticated attacker remotely to upload files, which could then lead to getting root access using JSON Web Tokens, JWTs.
And the cause was a hard-coded JWT.
Seriously. Yeah, that's a major oops. A hard-coded secret like that basically acts like a skeleton key, potentially bypassing normal authentication.
So how does the attack work?
The attacker sends specially crafted HTTPS requests to the AP image download interface. If it works, they can upload files, potentially move around the file system where they shouldn't, path traversal, and ultimately run commands as root.
Root access. Game over for that device.
Pretty much. Full control. They can install malware, change configs, use it to attack the rest of the network.
But there's a catch, right? A specific feature needs to be enabled.
Yes. Crucially, the out-of-band AP image download feature has to be turned on. And the good news is it's disabled by default on these Cisco devices.
Okay, so maybe the blast radius isn't as huge as it could be. That's something.
It definitely helps. Relies on people not having enabled that feature unnecessarily. Always good to review non-default settings.
Which products are affected?
It's specific Catalyst 9800 series controllers, the CL, the embedded, the regular 9800s, and also the embedded wireless controller on Catalyst APs. But only if they're running a vulnerable iOS XE version and have that specific feature enabled.
So check your versions, check that setting.
Absolutely. And the main recommendation, of course, is update to the fixed software version.
But Cisco offered a temporary fix too. Just disable the feature.
Right. If you can't patch immediately, disabling the out-of-band AP image download feature is the workaround. Cisco says this just makes the access points update using the standard method, cap-wap, and shouldn't affect wireless clients.
Good to have options. And this was found internally by Cisco.
Yeah, by someone in their own security testing group, ASIG. That's always good to see vendors finding flaws before the bad guys do.
And no evidence of it being exploited in the wild yet.
Correct. As of the advisory, no known malicious exploitation. Let's hope it stays that way and people patch quickly.
Okay, fingers crossed. Now for our final big story. The tables have turned on a ransomware gang. LockBit got breached.
Yeah, this is quite the development. LockBit, one of the most prolific and damaging ransomware groups out there, seems they got hacked themselves.
Karma. What happened exactly?
Their affiliate panels, the websites their partners use to manage attacks, got defaced. Someone put up a message saying, "Don't do crime. Crime is bad Zoxo from Prague."
Huh. Poetic justice. Did they say who did it?
The message linked to a SQL database dump, and a threat actor calling themselves Ray seems to be claiming responsibility.
A database dump. What was in it?
It sounds like a treasure trove for researchers and law enforcement. Reports mention around 60,000 unique Bitcoin addresses. Probably ransom payments.
60,000 addresses.
Details on the ransomware builds affiliates created, including some target company names. Configuration settings like telling the malware to skip encrypting virtual machine servers.
And negotiation chats.
Almost 4,500 messages from negotiations between LockBit and victims from late last year into April this year. That's a direct look into how they operate, how they pressure victims.
Incredible insight. Anything else? User accounts.
Yes, a users table with credentials for 75 admins and affiliates. And here's the kicker.
Oh no.
Plain text passwords.
No, seriously.
Seriously. Including gems like Weekend Lover 69. I mean, the irony. A cybercrime group failing at basic password security.
That is
Ugh.
just astonishing. You couldn't write it better.
It really undermines their image of being sophisticated operators, doesn't it?
Completely. Did LockBit respond?
Their public spokesperson, LockBitSup, acknowledged a breach happened in a chat, but tried to downplay it. Said no private keys or important operational data were lost.
Damage control, standard procedure.
Pretty much. The database dump seems to be from around April 29th. And interestingly, that defacement message, Zoxo from Prague, is very similar to one used when the Everest ransomware group got hit recently.
Oh, so maybe the same attacker or a
Yeah,
connection.
that's the speculation. Could be a rival group, could be a vigilante, could be something else entirely. But the similarity is definitely suggestive.
And the data seems legit.
Christian Beek at Rapid7 looked at it and said it appears authentic. The private messages, the Bitcoin addresses, victim info, it all seems real. He mentioned the aggressive negotiation tactics, ransom demands from a few grand up to $100,000.
Puts a face on the impact. And this isn't the first time LockBit's been hit, right? Operation Kronos.
Correct. Law enforcement disrupted their infrastructure significantly back in 2024 with Operation Kronos. This new breach just adds insult to injury, really damages their credibility further.
You have to wonder if affiliates will stick around if the main operators can't even protect their own systems.
Exactly. Trust is crucial in that ransomware as a service model. This kind of breach shakes that trust. We saw similar ripple effects after leaks hit Conti, Black Basta, Everest. Affiliates might look elsewhere.
It can really disrupt the whole ecosystem.
Potentially. These leaks provide intelligence, so distrust. It definitely makes life harder for the criminals.
LockBit's rep apparently wrote something in Cyrillic trying to minimize it, called it a hack of a light panel.
Yeah, trying to frame it as a minor part of their system being hit, claiming no decryptors or stolen company data was involved. They even offered a reward for info on the hacker.
Offering a bounty. They're definitely feeling the heat.
No doubt, especially considering how dominant they were. Early 2023, estimates put them at almost half, like 44% of all global ransomware incidents. This is a big fall.
Any idea how they were breached or ever?
There's some chatter linking both breaches to a specific vulnerability in PHP, a web scripting language. CVE 2024-4577.
Oh, the irony if they got hacked using the same kind of vulnerability they exploit themselves.
Wouldn't that be something? Shows that security is hard for everyone, I suppose.
Okay, one last quick one. Vulnerabilities in Apple's AirPlay, called Airborne. Patched now, thankfully.
Yes, discovered by Alligo. These affected AirPlay, which is used on Apple devices, but also in SDKs used by third-party products.
Right.
Potential for attackers to take over devices.
And the scary part was chaining them together. Wormable, zero-click.
That's the big concern. Chaining flaws like CVE 2025-24252 and CVE 2025-24132 could create an exploit that spreads automatically across a local network.
Without the user clicking anything, like a digital cold.
Exactly.
Right.
Very dangerous. Could be used to deploy backdoors, ransomware, silently across many devices.
Highlights how connected everything is. A flaw in one protocol affects so many things.
Definitely. And they found a whole range of issues. Remote code execution, bypassing security controls, reading files, leaking info, man-in-the-middle attacks, denial of service.
A real spectrum. Was there a particularly nasty scenario?
Well, they described a zero-click RCE on macOS. If you had AirPlay receiver turned on and set to allow connections from anyone on the same network or everyone.
Like on public Wi-Fi.
Potentially, yes. Your Mac could get compromised just by being on that network. Then you take that infected Mac home or to work, and it could potentially breach more secure networks.
Yikes. That's a worrying bridge between environments.
It is. Shows the importance of network security hygiene everywhere.
So lots of different flaws found.
Yeah.
But the good news is Apple has patched them.
Yes. Updates are out for iOS 18.4, iPadOS 18.4, iPadOS 18.4, macOS Sequoia 15.4, Sonoma 14.6.5, Ventura 13.7.5, tvOS 18.4, visionOS 2.4, basically the latest versions, plus updates for the AirPlay SDK and CarPlay plugin.
So the message is crystal clear. Update your Apple devices now.
And any third-party speakers or devices that use AirPlay, update everything that supports it. Alligo stressed this needs immediate attention. Corporate devices, personal devices, all of them.
It's a shared responsibility, right?
Yeah.
Keep your own stuff updated.
Absolutely. Essential patching hygiene.
Okay, let's wrap up this week's Security Sunday. Quite a week. We had the Moonlander botnet takedown, showing the risk of old devices.
The rapid exploitation of critical flaws in SAP, and a timely patch from Cisco for another major bug.
And the LockBit ransomware gang getting hacked, spilling their secrets. A rare look inside.
It all just reinforces how dynamic this field is. Threats evolve constantly, defenses have to keep up, it's nonstop.
And underlines why staying informed, like you are by tuning in, is so vital. So our final thought for you this week, building on everything we discussed.
Considering how interconnected things are, like with those AirPlay flaws, and the real danger posed by older, forgotten devices like in the Moonlander botnet.
How can you, personally or in your organization, get a better handle on your digital footprint? What concrete steps can you take to manage all those devices, connections, and data points to actually minimize your risk in this environment?
Definitely something we're thinking about. Proactive management is key.
Indeed. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive. We'll be back next week with more on Security Sunday, brought to you by the experts at Cisnet Shield.